We're going up and down, over and over, over and over. It's the same old thing, up and down, over and under.
Joe, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for thinking of me, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's funny. A lot of people say like, oh, this person wrote the book on this. You quite literally wrote the book on a lot of the strength and conditioning principles that are still being used today. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny how that project came to fruition, but you think of it as just a way to make a positive impact on the athletes you coach, and it turns into a different voice of its own, so to speak, where the people that you get involved with and people that become close to you as colleagues, and some even become almost like a unblood related family, that they push you in a direction to spread the thought process of what you did. I mean, what we created in 1992 was very innovative. It was not thought out the way we talked about structuring exercises, but it was built specifically, and it was created specifically because the women's basketball coach at the time at Boise State, and that was one of my top sports when I first got into it, June Doherty, she didn't challenge us, or didn't challenge me specifically, but she was a women's basketball coach in the early 90s. If you know anything about the history of collegiate strength and conditioning, most of the programs that the other sports, once the other sports realized, hey, what these football guys are doing, there may be some merit for us to do some strength training.
Just a little bit.
And then the evolution of a strength coach that became strength and conditioning coach, and now there's numerous names for it.
Yeah.
You generally got a old football program for that sport.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of how it generally went down.
Right.
And she played competitive basketball at Ohio State. She worked for Tara Vanderveer at Stanford in the 90s. So she knew she had higher expectations than that. And when she first met me, I walk in, and at that point in time, I'm saying, I'm a 6'2", 6'3" guy, but I'm 320 pounds. I'm 3 years out of playing competitive collegiate football, and I'm powerlifting. And she sees me walk in, and what does she think? Here's another football guy who's going to do football things. But like
train
I said,
my point guards like linebackers.
Yeah, and look, again, when you really look at it, training athletes is very similar anyway. But her point was, I'm tired of getting the old football programs to train my basketball team. And I took that to heart, because this was my team. Like Coach Thompson, who was my boss at the time, had told me these are my teams. I don't want to say I had creative freedom, but he had given me creative freedom to create these training plans. And like I said, I had a lot of background at that point in time of self-study, of reading a lot of different programming. And I was trained in college with a combination of the original high-intensity training principles of one set to failure, with some Olympic lifts and, power lifts molded in. But my college strength coach was 100% high-intensity based. He was mixing in the other stuff because the football coaches weren't. So that's where I first learned how to play the game and how you have to figure out how to justify stuff. But long story short, I developed this plan on my own. I mean, and then as I got more people that started to work under me, they got to understand it. And then I've gotten a lot of feedback from assistants over time. The integrity always stayed the same. That's a big thing about programming. That's a big thing about life. You're going to manipulate a lot of things, but your core, you can't break your core, like who you are and what you stand for. You can manipulate a lot of other things, but that stuff, you start messing with that, and then, things start becoming fraudulent.
Right.
So for me, so the evolution came to a point where we were rolling. We were doing a lot of good things. We were having very good success in our strength and conditioning program with all the sports at that time. At this time, I became the head strength coach, and my assistant at the time, Rich Gray, who was, like I said, he's my brother. So he's like, you got to write an article for the NSCA Journal. I'm like, nobody wants to hear this. This is nothing like they do believe in, right?
Ah, okay. So I mean, it was too big of a departure that you were like, this is
because I know what I study that stuff. I know what they expect. They expect certain protocols of how to write a program.
Right.
And when you're a huge conglomerate like that, it's hard for them to justify anything different, let alone some up and coming strength coach from Boise State and Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
And because I pushed some boundaries that were not legitimate protocols to powerlifting, Olympic lifting, weightlifting, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I was building something that was purely based off of training sport, what I call sporting athletes. Not athletes who compete in the strength disciplines of bodybuilding, powerlifting, and Olympic lifting at that time. Now you have strongman, professional CrossFit athletes. There's a couple of other professional strength-related disciplines out there now that is 100% committed to that. And so I broke some of the norms that most people were utilizing at that time that were kind of like, no, you can't do this. Well, the one thing you'll learn about training an athlete, you can pretty much do whatever you want. I mean, that's the truth, because there's so many of the modalities of physical fitness and strength development have to be intertwined when you're dealing with yourself. Like, you played football. You understand what I'm saying? You got to be strong. You got to be fast. You got to be pliable. You got to be conditioned. If you play football, you got to be able to play, between 1 and 15 plays in a series with only 30 seconds rest.
Right.
There's ways you got to prepare for that.
Yeah.
That's way different than one of those specific components of the three major disciplines of strength that we all got attracted to. So when I submit the article to the NSCA Journal, obviously I get peer reviewed, which to me, I still say I know who was allegedly on their peer review board, and none of them were coaching at that time.
Okay.
So you weren't peer reviewed. You were being reviewed by their editorial board.
Right.
And at the time, Harvey Newton, who's a very highly ranked weightlifting coach in the United States and is well renowned as a weightlifting aficionado, was the executive director of the NSCA. And long story short on that, because I don't want to get too carried away with my story.
No, this is actually fantastic. Yeah. I'm loving hearing about this. Yeah. Don't stop on my account.
So I get the article back, and obviously they're just ripping me. You can't do Olympic lifts after benching and squatting, and you can't do it here. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I told Rich, I said, I told you, these people don't want to listen. They don't want to see there's other ways to do this. I'm not going to answer these people questions. They don't live in our world. And I still say that. That as much as I believe in science, as much as I believe there has to be a connection, for you to be that closed-minded tells me that's not the science people I want to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and what were you seeing on your end? I mean, were the results, like, were you seeing the sort of improvement that was like giving you the feedback that, hey, like this is innovative, yes, but it's working. Again,
I don't want to get, what we do is general, what practice is specific. You're trying to mold. My overall generalization of my philosophy is, if I can develop a highly robust and resilient athlete, when that coach teaches them the very specifics, they should be able to improve. Like I can improve your vertical jump if you're a basketball player. I know I can. Right. But is that necessarily going to improve your rebounding if your coach doesn't properly teach you how to blocks out? And then more importantly, what we learned from someone like Dennis Rodman, are you studying angles? Are you watching the way the ball bounces off the rim?
Yeah.
Was he a great rebounder because of his fanatical effort? Yes. But when you listen to the guy, it's kind of like listening to Mike Tyson talk about boxing. Those guys studied the art of what they did. In Dennis Rodman's case, he studied the art of rebounding. So I was studying the art of developing a program for a sporting athlete to develop some type of plan that would build up their strength component, their speed component, their power component, their endurance component, continue to do things that would make them mobile and robust. As we got older, we really understood more about what people called prehab, or what I call now is, readiness programs and protection work.
Yeah, and I want to, if we have time, definitely want to talk to you a little bit about that as well.
And so there was a lot of things going on. So we saw, at that point in time, we called them our testing protocols. Right now, everybody calls them KPIs, or key performance indicators, that most people value in athleticism. We saw that. We saw overall, again, I will never tell you that my programs will reduce or prevent injury, because that doesn't happen in sports. We see it time and time again. And I learned that over time. How do we evolve my verbiage when I talk about what we're trying to do from an injury standpoint? And in the end, that's where I use the word protection. My ultimate goal is to try to build a body armor that builds the confidence that the athlete believes that we have put them in a sense and a development standpoint that they can protect themselves at all costs. And that if injury occurs, because the way they've been trained, hopefully we can expedite the recovery process, if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah. And
because here's what happens when and this is some and again, we're jumping around. Sorry, but
no, all good. I love it.
Here's the hypocritical stuff, the hypocrisy of strength coaching back in the early 80s and 90s when it comes to, and probably, you hear it a lot too. What's the number one goal of the strength program? Reduce injury, right? But back when I came up, that's what everybody was talking. But then the first thing we did with a new athlete, and we didn't even know their name, that's like a laugh, humor. We got to test you and see what you bench, see what you squat. I don't even know how you squat, or let alone clean, right? We got to get a max clean. Well, I've never cleaned before. All right, don't worry about it. We'll just see what it looks like so we can get a number. So
exactly.
It's like, don't tell me we're going to look to reduce injury when we're going to try to get one the first day we meet a guy.
Right.
Or
exactly.
And like I said, we saw the general stuff that we were hoping to do with a needs analysis. We removed. I don't believe there's one bad exercise. I don't believe any exercise. It's the applicability of that exercise that you have to look at. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just because so-and-so's program's doing these movements doesn't necessarily mean everybody has to do these movements. You have to look at where's the best bang for your buck. Because remember, most of the movements we pick are from, again, athletes that are professionals in that.
Yeah.
So when I go into the weight room as a power lifter, that's my practice field.
Right.
Not your practice field.
Right.
Most of the time, especially during the season, a lot of guys lift after practice. Do you really think they want to come in after practice? There's a story that I was told, and two high-level power lifters are training, right?
Okay.
And they're going through this monster program. And one guy always wondered why athletes can't get stronger, or athletes, right? And so after this big session, the one power lifter goes to the one guy, goes, "Hey, let's go out and shoot baskets." And he goes, "Why would I want to do that?" He goes, "That's the same thing the basketball player says after practice when the coach says go lift weights."
Right, exactly.
You got to know your clientele. So you got to build these programmings that make sense. I don't expect the athlete to love the weight room like I did. We didn't sign them for that. We're not paying them money for that. We didn't give them a scholarship for that. But if we can build a program where they understand what the goal is and the intent to help them improve themselves, and the things that come at it mentally as well as physically, and as well as things that you can, like you said, you can bring into everyday life, showing up on time, right? Being committed, understanding routine, understanding what work actually means,
right?
Understanding how relying on teammates is important, and then them relying on you, figuring out who has the capabilities to lead, figuring out who has the capability to follow, figuring out who are the capability that doesn't have either, and they wind up disappearing. That's life. That's in any business.
Well, and man, I have so many questions for you, but on that kind of thought, I have to imagine whether you're at college, you're in the professional ranks, like there must be so many different types of personalities that come through your door. And let alone, you already referenced this, like having to manage kind of that relationship with the coach who ultimately is probably having a lot of input as well. How do you go about trying to like maximize, I guess, what each athlete is getting out of the weight room? To your point, like when they're bringing, I mean, just within a football team, you have, the 185-pound wide receiver who can run a 4.3, and then you've got the D lineman who might be like, 315. Like, how do you go about managing all those personalities and different like athletic needs under one roof?
Well, and that's an evolution because, 20, 30 years ago, it didn't matter. Everybody did the same workout. Back then. Now, as your evolution came, and again, whether that was right or wrong, it didn't matter. Structure is better than no structure. Back then, the staffs were small. Like, for example, we had, I can't remember. Let's just say we had 17 sports at Boise State.
Yeah.
It was the head strength coach and me, and I was a GA. That was it.
Oh, 17 varsity sports.
Now, and that was small. But there was schools that had 20 plus varsity sports with only 2 people.
Right.
There was very few in the early 90s. There was very few full-time assistant strength and conditioning coaching jobs. It was usually a head guy and a bunch of GAs. And now it's almost totally flipped where everybody's full-time and there are no graduate assistant positions.
Oh,
and that's made it tougher for younger strength coaches to get masters, because when I came up, it was automatic. You go get your master's paid for by being a GA. Well, now it's you go right into a full-time, lower paid position and climb the ladder, but they still expect you to have a master's.
Right.
So it's
without being willing to pay for it.
It's an interesting game.
Yeah.
But to talk about the one, you always be grateful where I call you have your what's the easiest way? There's certain things like I can't help the fact that I was born and raised in New York, right, in Long Island.
Right.
So I was exposed to a lot of ethnicity.
Yeah.
I was exposed to a lot of, color.
Right.
So for me, that I feel like that's always been that's just an unwritten gift. Like I was fortunate to be raised in a environment where, whether it was, conducive to anything else, I just saw a lot.
Yeah, you were like among diversity, like you didn't know any different.
So for me, it was always, and coming from lower middle class, you see things in a different perspective.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I personally think those people and athletes who come from, let's just say, from the bottom to the top, really succeed better from those who started at the top, because they don't understand the come up.
Yeah.
And again, everybody's got their trip, right? Everybody's got their journey. I'm not putting down. Hell, I wish, sometimes, man, imagine if my dad didn't pick up trash for 20 years and he was a whatever college professor or lawyer, how would I have been raised?
Right.
But my dad worked sanitation in a time where you didn't go with the clamps. You walked from house to house, dumping garbage and throwing it on your shoulder 20 miles a day. So that's what I knew, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we're talking sports and having to be a tough SOB at my dinner table. We're not talking, what happened on TV or
right.
CNN and stuff like that. So again, I'm not everybody. Like I said, everybody's different. It's how you take what you are and figure out how to learn what you don't know is about. It's easier to, and again, this is my opinion. I always reserve the right to be wrong. It's one person's life journey that tells them that I'd rather be on the come up and understand the process and understand that journey means something than be up on top and not understand what happens when you crash and burn.
You know what? And this is going to be a total, I have a whole list of things here I want to ask you, but this is something I think about a lot. So, I grew up in a blue collar family. Dad worked hard, but there's, a number of things that were tough growing up in some circumstances, but had it generally pretty well. But I would say like the chips that I have on my shoulder are like the things that drove me to get to the point that I am today. And I almost like treasure them in a way, you know what I mean? And in a way, and I'm getting over it as I get older, but like the people who had everything handed to them, I don't know if resentment was the right word.
I never had resentment. Like everybody has their own thing. Like I know that in my situation, the town I lived in made me who I am, made my dad who he is. But in the end, I didn't want to stay there like they did.
Right.
Like I had bigger fish to fry, so to speak. So I knew like my drive was, do I think my mom and dad could have figured out a way to pay for me to go to college? Yeah, because that's who they are. But I wasn't going out like that. I told, if I wasn't getting a scholarship, then I was going to work with my dad at the sanitation.
Right.
So my dad saw the drive that I had odds and end jobs growing up, but my dad said, your job is to get out of here. So he was willing to, like where other kids were working, I was in the weight room.
Yeah, focusing on
when
sports.
When other kids were working, I was running the streets of Inwood, because in the end, that I wasn't talented enough not to do that. In high school, I had to work to be good at what I was. My high school was one of the best high schools on Long Island to play football. My high school coach played with my dad at that high school. They were very good friends. My uncle played at that high school, was an assistant coach. The line coach, who I give a lot of credit for giving me the skills to get a scholarship, played at that high school and was from that area. So it's one of those types of, it's like I call it a small country town in Long Island, how it was born and bred in that deal, and the 5 towns area as a whole. So I just knew that was my way out, and there was nothing I had to, and again, I just wanted out. No, I have no qualms of saying it. There's nothing bad about where I was from. There was nothing bad I want to say about my childhood. There's nothing bad I want to say about my high school experience. I just wanted it out. I wanted out of New York. I wasn't into the hit the city and the nightlife stuff too crazy. I just was like, hey man, I got to get out. And I told my mom, I said, when I leave, I'm not coming back unless it's a few vacations. And she said it till the day she passed. She goes, you always said you weren't coming back, and you never did. And again, I could have went to Syracuse. My final 2 choices of college after I was very fortunate. I got I chose where I wanted to go. I wasn't told where I wanted to go.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That is a good problem to have.
Yeah. So my final 2 choices was Syracuse, who recruited me hard for 2.5 years. And back then, no one offered you as a sophomore or a junior. You very rarely got that. You had to play it out and see where the chips fell.
Right.
And Wake Forest. And then my other 5 were, my top 5 were Rutgers, Temple, and South Carolina was my final 5.
Yeah.
But I chose Wake Forest, one, because I just felt, even though Syracuse was 5 hours away, it was still in New York. So I was like, I'm just out. And Wake Forest gave me an opportunity where I thought athletically I could be a big fish in a little pond for them, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
And I was looking at it from playing time. You play Division I. If you're good enough, you go to the NFL, right? Doesn't matter. Academically, extremely challenging. Everybody goes, man, did you go there for the academics? I said, absolutely not. I said, that's just, fortunately for me, my dad was a very stickler for me when it came to grades, because his grades were utterly poor. So, and like I said, he went to my high school, so he had my grades before I had them. And he drove so my dad picked up trash in the morning. He drove the afternoon school bus for the junior high and high school in the afternoon.
Oh, no kidding.
And then he'd watch practice and then go bounce, because he was one of the top bouncers on Long Island in Queens. And
your dad sounds like a legend.
And my dad's an OG. Like, he was an OG. My
we might have to get him on the show. If
he's gone now. But
sorry.
my oldest son's a lot like him. I'm not so much. Those guys are G'd up, man. The thug life was real.
That's amazing.
So
Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
so again, getting back to what we're talking about, so you understand people, right?
Yeah.
And that helps, and you understand, but you're not 100%. Like you can never, you're not going to hit with everybody. And I was fortunate that I hit with a way more. Like I would say, and my wife hates like when you throw out numbers like 95%. Well, where did you get 95%? But I would say very, very confidently that I hit with 9 out of 10 or better of every athlete I ever came into contact with. Now that 1% or that 10% or less, you better have people surrounding you that have personalities that can work with those people.
Right.
Because you're not, like, again, a great example is I have the utmost respect for Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm.
The utmost. One of the hardest working athletes I've ever coached, high school, college, or pro.
Yeah.
Unique in a lot of ways, but very hard on himself, had his way of doing it. But when it came to what we asked, hard worker. But I let my assistant, Jason Mengucci, train him one-on-one because their fit was better.
Oh, interesting.
I've got nothing. There's no. I don't think. I think Cam's cool with me. I'm cool with Cam. But in the end, for us to be successful, I thought Jason was the perfect fit for him. And for 7 years, he trained Cam. I call it one-on-one, but Cam would be in there with the groups during group time, unless during the season, a little different because as guys have different schedules during the season after practice with media and stuff. I mean, same thing with Christian McCaffrey. I trained Christian one-on-one during the season, and a lot of times with media, man, or treatment and stuff like that, sometimes they're not going to be there with the whole group.
Right.
But Cam, it just feels so you find those fits. That's why when you want to, if you're an up-and-coming coach, you never want to hire yourself as an assistant. You already have that person. I would say the same thing in business. If you're running a team for a business, or you're the executor overseeing a team and you're putting a team together, you already got you.
Right.
So you don't need you. You got to be aware of that. Plus when you're building a team and you're building a staff and you have these unique individuals, you got to learn to be what's the word? Not vulnerable. As much as you want to be arrogant and cocky and be selfish, you can't do that. If you want to be successful, you have to show some vulnerability in yourself. If that's anything that I've learned over time, starting off as a brash, arrogant type of leader, and as I grew with the help of several people at Arizona State in particular that took me under my wing. Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, was at Arizona State at the time. A woman that he brought in that was very, very important in my growth as a leader was a Christine Muldoon. She was one of those types of outside influencers that you bring in to help build culture. The famous cultural line. And those two people in particular, Dirk Cutter, football coach that was at Boise State with me and Arizona State, and now is a NFL coach. He had a lot to do with that and believing in my leadership capabilities. But it's an evolution, and you learn a lot. You learn different things as being a leader. The role I'm in now for Dynamic, I have a cool title, but I understand that my role is more of a support to the other VPs and the owners. So, I have a leadership title, but I've understood from a vulnerability standpoint of where my role really is underneath these people. And I have to learn. That's something you learn, right? Take direction from people. And at this point in time, that's good to know, because if there is a time I can get back into coaching, I will have a better understanding of my staff. Because for the most part, my entire career, I've been a leader.
Right.
When I played, I led. When I played and the coaching staff realized my commitment to the weight room, I was in charge of getting guys in there. It was on me. I
Yeah.
would have been the one punished if they didn't come in. And when I started to get into coaching, my first coaching job, all I believed from the time I was a sophomore in college was I want to be a coach. I want to be a strength coach. I want to work with these guys. And then I get my opportunity. A great one of our graduate assistants got a high school job, like I said, down in Florida. And I go out there and I go out for the first practice, and I'm like, man, what happens if I can't coach? Like, what happens if I suck?
Right.
And
Yeah.
now what do I do? Like, I put all my eggs in this basket, right?
Yeah.
Get a health and sports science degree. That ain't going to help me in the business world. I mean, like, I'm all in, right? And luckily for me, my style, my persona, the things that, my passion, my enthusiasm for what I was trying to accomplish, I hit. And, people ask, man, why do you think of this? I said, sometimes when someone says, or someone talks about you or says, oh man, he's got a gift. And then you say, well, explain what that means. A gift is it's unexplainable to me. Like, you can't, there's nothing to explain. Like I said, why am I usually have a good rapport with a lot of the athletes? Oh, that's his gift. Well, what does that mean? It means what I said. Maybe that gift was because where I grew up, my exposure to a large abundance of different people, from whether it's race, creed, color, ethnicity, background. I was afforded that.
Yeah.
Because I saw that, like I said, in Inwood was this level, but in Lawrence was a little bit level higher. North Woodmere and Woodmere was another higher let's just say tax brackets.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I got you.
And then they all had, there was 6 public schools that all funneled into the junior high. So now you're in your little isolation, like PS number 2, all the Inwood kids, right? And then all of a sudden you get funneled into junior high, and now you meet kids from like number 1 school, number 5 school, and number 6 school, and you really didn't even know those people existed.
Yeah.
and they're like a 2-minute drive down the street.
Right. And then I imagine like all different like economic backgrounds.
I mean, it's changed, but like if we went to the 5 towns, you can see like Inwood was literally the other town across the tracks.
Okay.
Then you cross the tracks to Lawrence, and then Lawrence, Cedarhurst. So they were real close, but like Lawrence was like always rated lower than Cedarhurst, and then Woodmere was over there, and then North Woodmere, right?
They just sound like they're, you know what I mean? Like you could probably pick out by the name which one was.
I give you even a better one. So you watch Goodfellas?
Yes.
So good. Ray Liotta, Henry Hill's wife, was from North Woodmere.
Oh, okay.
So you can get an idea of the area I lived in when you mix it all up. But again, so you take that, and then when I got older, I was fortunate, like as I make my growth and I make my journey. Well, now I go to Utah. So now I'm exposed to 2 very interesting societal types of people.
Yeah, you gotta pause when you start talking about what's going on in Utah, because there's a lot going on.
I get really introduced to the Mormon religion and the structure and the rigidity of certain things that ask, especially the whole mission process.
Oh yeah.
So now you have to understand that, right? Because as a non-Mormon, that's a brand new education process to me. You could see a guy as a freshman and he turns 19. He's going on his mission for 2 years.
2 years, and then he comes back.
Now
as a
he comes
sophomore.
back and he's 21 years old, and there's a good chance within that time he'll get married and have a kid.
Yeah, my roommate in college on the football team was Mormon, and I think Hawaiian initially. And I know there's a lot of. And
then you get the Polynesian. Now that's a total culture. Like I always said, don't pick a fight with a Polynesian, because unlike every other grouping that I've coached, they stick together. That's true family. Like if you had like a battle royale of just say, Caucasians, African Americans, and polys, and you had to call your boys up. Somebody you might like, hey man, we're having this like, Lords of Flatbush Rumble.
Right, it's going down.
I'm not coming to help you. I got other things to do. The Polynesians, they'll all be there.
Yeah, my buddies are all watching The Masked Singer or something on Fox.
They're very, very family oriented, They're very, very committed to each other. You learn that stuff. And again, we're kind of making jokes about it, but those are things that help me because now, like to me, I said, I've got it all covered. I've coached all different demographics. I've coached, I mean, I hate to say it, guys with gang affiliations in Los Angeles to Polynesians to grown men of the Mormon religion. That's a very interesting dynamic to study on top of everything else. So I've been exposed to a lot. And I say to myself, I spent 2 years in Utah, and I was supposed to spend 2 years in Utah because I got to learn about coaching Polynesians and coaching those of the Mormon faith. And a lot of Polynesians are Mormon. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. I use that to my advantage because it's part of the growth process. And so every step of the journey, I've had a lot of positive things. I spent 2 years at Louisville. The staff was let go after 2 years, but I don't like talking politics. I don't like talking religion, but one of the greatest things that ever happened to me at Louisville was my relationship with the FCA chaplain, Chris Morgan. Like, it's just a legitimate, deep-hearted friendship. Like, I've confided in him. And what I love about Chris is, and he's a very, he's a Christian. Like, he is, but like he told me a few times, he goes, just remember, House, I wasn't always a Christian. So
don't step too far.
Yes, but he understands. He allows me to be me, and I want to be respectful of who he is. Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm guarded, but if I slip and drop an F-bomb, I'm cool because Chris is cool because he knows it's me. Where on other people, I would be a little bit like, damn, man, you can't be doing that.
Right.
Chris allows, and that's why Chris's base and his FCA growth at Louisville is one of the strongest I've ever seen is because he allows you to be him. Like, here's a guy who'll do Ramadan if you're Muslim with the guys, right?
Oh, cool.
Here's a guy who understands Hanukkah and all. I mean, he's about being there for the player.
Yeah, he embraces and like respects other viewpoints, cultures,
he's not
religions.
there throwing it at you.
Yeah,
he will embrace you if you come to him with questions, but he's not out there peddling it. And I don't want to seem derogatory to that. No. I'm just saying that. And I think that's what makes him so successful is.
Yeah.
He is who he is. And oh, by the way, I just happen to be the FCA chaplain.
Right. Well, and to your point, like, it kind of gets me thinking, like, as long as you're authentic, and if you're truly authentic to yourself, what you believe, what you stand for, in most situations, people will be respectful and appreciate that. Right. It does cross a line if, like, you begin to start kind of trying to force whatever your perspective is, your viewpoint. And that could even be like, if we're talking about training, that could be like your method of training. That's when it becomes like a problem. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed, especially, like I said, over the last week, I've been going through a lot of your old presentations and watching the new stuff you're doing through your platform on YouTube. I would say you come across as 100% authentic. And one of the,
appreciate that. That's more important than a lot of things. And it's funny you say that because one of our owners, Kurt Tambernino, he'll remind the people in the office is, I don't want him to lose his authenticity.
You don't want him to show up in a tie.
That's who he is. Let him be who he is. And
right. Absolutely, man.
And so it's cool. And again, I know who I am. Yeah. Right. Like I always say, I know what I know. I know what I don't know. I know what I need to know. And I know what I don't care to know. Because I'm at that point I'm at that point in my life. Like 20 years ago, there's probably a lot of things I needed to know and then even though I didn't care about it, I thought I had to because that's like that growth mindset and all that stuff, right? Read 1 million books a year and not comprehend any of them. Just say you read them, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm at that point in my belief that there's a lot of great things out there, whether it's training, whether it's conditioning, whether it's this, whether it's nutrition, recovery, sleep, how to run a business. But I'm so uprooted in what I believe. If I don't think that particular measurement or verse or something doesn't have any type of ability to be modified and applied to
Mhm.
my belief system, then I'm okay with someone else knowing that and I'm not. Because
Yeah.
I have, very limited time. Uh, there's only so many seconds in a minute. There's only so many minutes in an hour. There's so many hours in a day
Right.
that I'm going to make sure that I've done enough deep thought that if I'm going to go into this and dive into this from an investment,
Yeah.
that I know something involved in that is going to be able to be applicable to what I'm looking for it to be. And
Yeah.
like with training, there's a lot of great training stuff out there. There's certain things that are I highly respect the amount of time that individuals put into it. It just doesn't fit me.
Hmm.
I know enough to know, like, if somebody asks me about it and like, hey, can you use this with the tier system? Of course you can, because what you're talking about is this. The tier system is that. So yes, it can be meshed. Oh, I didn't think about that. I just thought it was training programs. No, there's difference between programming and cyclical based, right? Like cyclical is more the in-depth sets and reps.
Yeah.
Programming and structure is choice and order of exercise, risk analysis on those exercises. Sets and reps can be done a lot of different ways, regardless of the exercise, and vice versa.
Right.
So there's certain things that mix, and same thing with business. There's a lot of great things out there. I mean, I read this book. He read this book. I don't necessarily. I like reading books that people don't read.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, there's people out there who know that I wouldn't be BSing if I said that, but I was one of the first persons that got exposed to Patrick Lenciani. I don't know if you're familiar with like
No, I'm not.
five dysfunctions of a team.
Oh, no.
Four,
I'll have to look that up.
but he's got a bunch of books. I just read The Motive, but he the five dysfunctions of a team is like a monster book in sports and leadership, and a lot of coaches have read it. But I was one of the first ones that got exposed to that and brought that up on some old interviews, and like they've got. 3 Signs of a Miserable Job was a very, very good book. A book that has helped me twice. One was when I knew my time was running out at Arizona State, and helped me move on to Louisville.
Okay. Like, yeah, because of that book, you could see some of the signs that this was kind of needing to come to an end.
Right. And then, there's I mean, I've got the whole up there, but it's like four objectives of an extraordinary executive.
Okay. I'll have to check this out.
Yeah. And what the great thing about it is I love the writing style, and I have a hard time now retaining stuff, like remembering. So that's why I'm like big highlight dog tail, and get back to them and do some review. But what I love about the read is he writes the first half in like a fable. So when he's talking to you about the 3 signs of a miserable job, but he's walking you through like a story. And then the second half is like the textbook.
Right.
That makes sense. So it
does make sense. Yeah.
Very, very valuable. A big, huge fan. He doesn't know how much he's driven a lot of the things that I've tried to do. Another great book, Death by Meeting. Everybody wants to meet. I'm going to meet to compete. And that doesn't mean hour-long meetings 10 times a day and getting nothing accomplished. You can get a lot accomplished in a 5-minute huddle or a 2-minute, we used to call like 2-minute warnings, where we just meet every day as a group, just quick to get everybody's goals and objectives of what's going on in their schedule in case there was some overlap that we had to do, or maybe a problem that needed to be solved.
Yeah.
So again, great author, highly recommend. If you're not exposed to him, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I'll link to those in the show notes for sure afterwards too. So if people listening want to check it out, that'd be perfect.
That's been awesome. One book that I read a long time ago that really made me think was called The DNA of Success, and it talked about goal setting and versus heartfelt. I think it was mindset versus heart set. I can't remember the terms, but a lot of times, people talk about writing down your goals is a key point to achieving them.
Yeah.
But yet the truth is that you can write down all the goals you want. If it's not embedded in your heart, you're not going to achieve them whether you write them down or not.
Yeah.
So there's things you got to understand.
Yeah.
If you're going to write them down, are they still embedded in your heart?
Yeah.
Because
No,
if they're
that makes
not,
sense.
you're just going to write. You're going to look at that goal and you're like, yeah, I wrote these goals down, but I don't give a crap.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be like some meaning and intent behind it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta put yourself in a sense of, are you willing to persevere? Are you willing to fight and sacrifice for this goal? And that's something that again, say it's a 200-page book. That's the thing that sticks out to me. I read that book, probably 15, 16 years ago, and that's something that I've always resonated with.
To.
There's a lot of great. What is it? Again, I had them all. I've just been doing stuff. I can't remember. Is it The Mindful Athlete? Is another great book. Golly, I forgot the author is awesome. I think it's called The Mindful Athlete. I'll check and send it over to you because I got all those books out.
Yeah.
Is it over there? No, that one's on another shelf. And I've read some of John Maxwell's stuff, but everybody reads John Maxwell, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather try to build something that I'm a big believer in being who you are. I'm not following the trail because, everybody says Maxwell's the guy, so everybody's going to read Maxwell. But then I know that everybody who reads Maxwell is going to have the same visual intention. Where if I read some of these other people that no one is, my perspective can help bridge these gaps.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and so, that's actually a good point too, because we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Like, in the early 90s, the world of strength and conditioning, to your point, was like, there was a very traditional way that you did things, right? And to innovate was kind of like it almost sounded like you had to fight this old guard, so to speak, who was peer reviewing.
Go all the way back to that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do the edits. And Rich was like, you got to do the edits. I said, these guys don't want to hear from me. I told you, it's the NSCA.
Right.
I mean, I know what they're thinking. And he called Harvey. And remember I told you, Harvey is a world-renowned Olympic weightlifting coach.
Right.
And if anybody was going to tell me I was wrong, it would have been him.
Yeah.
Because of the way I programmed it. And he told Rich, he said, Rich, you tell him to finish the article because people need to see this.
Awesome.
So I finished.
Wow.
So that's 1997.
Cool. Okay.
So I finished the article and it gets published and it sparked a lot of interest.
Right.
Several years later, I'm at, now I was at Boise for 2 more years. I went to Utah, implemented the system at Utah, went to Arizona State, implemented the system at Arizona State. And we're still seeing, pretty good success. We'd all like to see more wins and losses. I think strength and conditioning for football is it's hard to evaluate. I think
that's what I was going to ask you.
I think a lot of times it's
how were you guys?
And
how were you guys evaluating?
Well, again, it's based on wins and you're getting evaluated on wins and losses no matter what you do, and that's where it's hard because like I've had coaches say, man, we had 30 guys bench press 400. Well, you're 3-9, and again.
Right.
And I got caught up a couple like the number stuff a couple of times in my career where like these numbers don't mean what if
don't mean dick. It's all right. I'll stay for you. I'll finish it.
If we don't see any type of whatever transferring to the field, I mean, we can get as strong as possible. Like, is 600 gonna make is squatting 600 gonna make me any better if I squat 550? And I'm not saying there's a cutoff, but after a while, you got to evaluate. Okay, what else can we get this guy strong at? Because he squats 550, but he can only lunge 95 pounds. That's an issue.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So you start as you get out of this meatheadness that I call it, and you start to evaluate. That's why I say there's different ways to be strong.
Right.
And, so there's, can you be strong? I don't think you can ever be strong enough, but strength, I'm talking strength from a relative standpoint. Like after a certain amount of time in the squat, we're going to start changing the exercises because I don't need you to squat 550 if you already squat 500. But
Right.
I may want you to front squat more. Or like I said, I may need you to improve your lunging. I may need to improve your single leg rear foot elevated squat. You clean 300, but now let's try to really work on velocity based stuff, right?
Yeah.
Finding that range where we can really, people say we're using the Olympic lifts to improve explosiveness, right? But if we're doing terrible technique and it's being muscled up, we're not getting the transferable trait we hope. And that's why we're losing out. And again, the ultimate goal is to improve confidence. If you train a guy right, or you train a woman right, especially women, the best people to train are women because they don't get carried away with the number chasing. The only group of women who really get carried away with number chasing, in my experiences, are the women throwers because there's a relevance to improve strength and throwing.
Right. Yeah.
That's truth. My son's a thrower. I've seen it. You get stronger, you're probably going to throw further. You get stronger in football, you might not necessarily become a better football player if you've gotten to a certain level of skill. So there's different things you have to formulate when it comes to training athletes. That's totally different than training a competitive lifter.
Well, and you've said this a couple of times too, and it's something that I think is so important to conceptualize, right? It's like, it's not about getting strong. It's not about how much you squat. The end result is like, can we win games? So to your point, what you keep saying is like, does it transfer? Like, great that you can squat, but like you already squat enough to where you have the strength that you need. We now need to like round out all these other potential like strengths, weaknesses to make you a good player, not a good weight room lifter.
And that's the same. And it's the same thing I'm sure it's the same thing in business. A guy can crunch numbers, but he can't display the ability to show the value of those numbers and where they lead to in business. That's why I think those who understand the numbers and understand the applicability of how those numbers are, those are the most wealthiest venture capitalists and hedge fund leaders in the world, right? Oh yeah, definitely. Or those who are able to understand algorithms and then apply them in a matter, aka Facebook, to do things that you never thought were, or the person who created Zoom or the person who created Squadcast. I mean, come on, man. Or FaceTime or the fact that this phone right here could has my bank information. I can pull up my reports. I can pull up, it's like, come on, really? Like, that we're conversing and we're on Wi-Fi, right? Like that makes sense to me. Or every time I get in a plane, I'm like, who really had the understanding and the genius to allow this monster machine to actually get off the ground? I mean, or a huge barge that can actually stay buoyant in the water. The people who have that intelligence to understand the mathematician equations and the things that make that work, that's just fascinating to me. I mean, I'm a weightlifting coach. I need to know how to convert kilos to pounds. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But
what's interesting though is like, and I completely agree, but to the outsider and even people who lift, even people who've maybe like played college sports, what programming, sets and reps, you know what I mean? Tempo, like all of these things can seem really overwhelming, quite frankly. It's like, look, it's like, hey, this is the goal that I have. This is where I'm trying to get to. So what you do to an outsider actually looks very complex. And one of the things I wanted to ask you actually, because you did bring up the tier system, it seems like you've created a structure. And actually one of the questions I have is like, has it changed over time? That might be interesting too, but you've created a structure where it makes it a bit more approachable. And I think, depending upon what outcome or adaptation you're looking for, gives you a relative framework that you can kind of work within. So I guess, one of the things I would ask you is like the tier system as it stands today, knowing that, was this also kind of created in 97?
92.
Or was this even 92? So like from your standpoint, like has the tier system kind of like stood the test of time?
Yeah. Well, it's still going strong. So I would say yes. And it's known around the world,
Oh yeah.
which is extremely humbling. Like, right. So when we write the book, I'll tell you a funny story about the book. So the book came about because now we're my trajectory of my career is on the up, right?
Yeah.
I'm at a name school. It's amazing how quick you get to be good when you're at a name school, and it's funny because Boise State is now a name school. When
Oh,
I
yeah.
was at Boise State, we were 1AA football making the climb, and
Yeah.
because we've had great coaches and great players and great administration and great booster support, it is what it is today, which is phenomenal, and I'm glad to be a small part of the growth of that.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at what we've done is has it stood the test of time? Why? Because it's sustainable.
Hmm.
And when I say what makes it sustainable is it's easily adapted to what a coach knows or doesn't know at that time that they are in their experiences. And again, long-term sustainability, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it gave, a lot of people don't like to use the word templated, right, or cookie cutter. That's a crock, right? I don't get
Yeah.
into that. Just like sports specific lifting, lifting's lifting. But the integrity of the model, like I said, the first thing that gets lost, and that's why it's important that I do write another edition of the book to be a little bit more deliberate in the steps of program design, is a lot of people get, and when I look at it now, I did do a poor job of explaining these templates. They think it's cyclical based.
Okay.
Like I would say, with limited knowledge of triphasic training, I know you've had Cal on.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
consider that a cyclical based program.
Oh, okay.
It's based off of tempos of reps. It's based off certain rep schemes. It doesn't necessarily matter what exercises or how you order your exercises.
So got it.
Where the tier system is the exact opposite. It is based off of highly structured organization and rotation of exercise. That's why when people always ask me, hey, can you do triphasic with the tier system? Of course. That's almost too simple to answer in my world.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because one is cyclical and one is exercise choice and order.
Ah, God, so that's a good differentiation too, because and yeah, Cal was a fantastic guest, and I love his books as well. But that's a good point, right? It's like a lot of his stuff is like, hey, look, if you do this exercise, this compound movement, let's on this, to your point, like rep and scheme, it's like
for this 4 weeks you're doing eccentric, but then the next 4 weeks it's this. So that has nothing to do with nothing to do with structure and organization of exercise, but because the way I built it, again, I did a poor job, and I think I know why now people feel it's the tier system cyclical based. And I have to remind them, like, that in my life's work comes down to it's a 3-day total body or whole body session based off of the structured rotation of 3 movement categories. That's it. That's my life's work in 10 seconds. But the evolution of, like you said, what has happened within that dynamic of developing a daily session and then through a weekly session and then the growth throughout the different lengths of times of a cycle, there's been some subtle changes. But I would think the same thing that with Cal, if you were to ask Cal, the way he writes those cycles, there's certain type of specific orders. And that's the integrity of it, right? I think he would say you can do this with, I'm sure, again, like I said, I'm limited knowledge. I'm sure there's certain things that can be rotated in and out, but there's a certain structure to the cyclical way he wants those types of training blocks to be written. That can't be broken. Like, again, there's probably, if he's doing a full eccentric cycle, that has to be followed by this, right?
Got it.
It can't be followed by whatever. And that's the same thing for our thing is it's a structured rotation of exercises. So say for the session T or the total body priority, the total body is number 1, the lower body's number 2, the upper body's number 3. Then you come back through total body and then lower body. The truth is, depending on your belief system, I could care less what goes in there. How do you define total body? Then put a total body lift where it belongs. How do you define lower body? And there's discussions to be like that. Like I've talked to a lot of people, when you design your exercise pool, that's your pool. It's how you differentiate your exercises. Like for me, and how my thought process goes, Brett Contreras really popularized hip thrusts.
Okay.
Right? I've talked to people that consider a hip thrust a lower body exercise. I consider it a total body exercise because it's hip extension.
Okay.
So anything with hip extension or hinging, like deadlifting and variations of deadlifting, goes in total body. Knee dominant work is lower body. So anything that's a whole, like jumping and med ball throwing, those to me are total body components.
Yeah.
So they would fit into the total body category if I'm going to bring in single response jumps into a strength training session.
Yeah.
They're going to be classified, and without complexing, that's going to be classified a total body movement.
Got it.
But that might not be that way for you. And that's okay, because if me and you are comparing programs and I see you put a hip thrust as a lower body exercise, I would just ask you, are you classifying hip thrust as a lower body? If you say yes, I'm not going to debate you like, well, that's a total, like other, hey man,
don't get caught up in
it's your program. And just like I said, I believe in what I do 100%. When I got to the NFL has been predominantly a 4-day split program. And here I come, and people are, are you going to change? I go, I can't change. This is how I got here. I can't not throw away what I believe in because I got here. I just got to make it work. And we do, because the 4th session or the 5th session, depending on how you want to structure a week, are your auxiliary days, or what we called your blitz work, where you're getting in the extra work that doesn't fit into the main session. That's a lot of it is very individualistic. It could be programming to help you coming off. You've got a old shoulder injury, so you need to do more posterior shoulder, or you want to do more core, or you want to do arm farm. There's all those things. That's your accessory work, and that's what fits in on our day. So and that's what I call the blitz packages. Like if we need to do extra work, that's where a lot of the individuality comes in. It is on the Tuesday work, or whatever you want to call that day, the auxiliary session. But now, depending on the amount of clientele, I've learned now, being away from coaching this year and doing a lot of these little medley types of 3, what I call trifecta work, like 3 exercises that fit the same tier to build out these things for more advanced athletes. As I get with limited numbers, I can do the tier system and be more individualistic during these 3 days with the types of packages that we put together. Like you asked, like, what is some of the growth of the tier system? Well, when we first started, it was based on prime movers. So every upper body exercise was some version of a press. And we were doing all the accessory pulls on Tuesday.
Okay.
Well, now as we build out, and we're going to build a belief of protecting the body, what is really a whole body approach. It's these generalizations of movements that I've utilized from other people and learned terminology from other people that we fit into this package. Well, now I even at a lower age bracket, a upper body tier now for me will generally have, especially in the first 3 tiers, will generally have 3 exercises within that tier that rotate through in a what I call a medley. People would call a mini circuit. So, for example, every upper body for tiers 1, 2, and 3, where it used to be just one exercise,
you might just bench press.
Right. Well, now on that bench day, say Friday's your big bench day, session you're going to have a horizontal row, the bench, and a posterior deltoid movement or a posterior shoulder. Because again, it goes back to pairing the same plane. So a horizontal press, horizontal row.
Got it.
We're going to probably do more volume for the row because it's a stabilizer, and we need to develop the go muscles rather than the show muscles. So
Yeah.
we want to enhance that part of it. We're going to go to the bench because that's the priority of that session, and then
Right.
we're going to go to a posterior shoulder because that's one of the most injury-prone areas, regardless of sport, is posterior capsule and the posterior shoulder, whether it be rotator cuff, all kinds of issues that happen.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, it helps build what I call head support or reinforcing the head stability through training the neck, the traps, and the posterior shoulder. That's three unique muscle group areas that form the triangle that supports your head.
Yeah.
Which was I dictate as reinforcement techniques. So, so these are the things that you learn how to build out. As the older the athlete gets, like I was again, because of my relationships with powerlifting, when I first started, the first 3 tiers of lower body were all 3 bilateral squat movements. And then it became 2 squat movements. And now, depending on the athlete's position or sport, it might only be 1. And I was a huge back squat dominated program. And for a lot of sports, it would be front squat. And not because of anything, but just, again, looking at applicability, posture assessment, the relationship of position to the athletic position, the fact that you can't have a bad front squat, but you can have a bad back squat.
That's a great point.
And so again, it's the evaluation of movement. And again, these are very general. There's a lot of people way smarter than me that I rely on when it comes to very specific things. As far as like when you're talking about the core work, which we call root, because everything is rooted at the midsection, and then your limbs or your arms and your legs.
Right.
What people want to talk about, anti-flexion, anti-extension. Why can't we just call it like planking and then whole iso holds, right?
Because it doesn't look as good on the YouTube video.
Again, so for me, there's merit in that, and that's part of what we call our root programming. And you have to get, and again, training the posterior chain or training the core. It used to be 3 sets of 25 crunches and 3 sets of 15 back extensions. It's morphed into its own workout in itself now because Mike Boyle, when I got exposed to Mike Boyle's work, he really stimulated my thought on the more emphasis on single leg variations, really looking at the front squat versus the back squat for athletes. And I think in 1999, and I have to look through stuff, he had come up where there was like 7 different components to core training, like flexion extension, knee to shoulder, shoulder to knee, lateral flexion, stabilization, rotation. So now you're building out all these exercise pools to make sure you hit all these different components of building a strong and robust core. And now the big things are like dead bugs, right? Bird dogs, the McGill Big 3. So there's a lot of things that are going on. And then there's a difference between and I'm learning I picked up a couple of things from Dr. Aaron Horsching of Squat University, where like training for different things, you want to be stiff and rigid. So for me, like I would do, what I learned was like, if I'm doing a side bend for strength, like oblique strength, but really on like a deadlift or squat day, I probably want to do a single arm carry for stiffness. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. That makes sense.
So they're like little things like that. Like, okay, so now, and again, I've been doing a lot of planking and bracing stuff on our squat day, but like on a deadlift or a clean day, I want a little bit more stiffness. I need to do a little bit more of these types of movements. And again, this is stuff I'm learning now after how many years in the game? Just little stuff that becomes, Mike Robertson said it a long time ago. A lot of people have said it, but like when they talk about like the evaluation of your programming is a lot of things like from a prehab or cleanup you should be already in your programs. Like instead of having, we got to do prehab. Well, if you're programming right, that stuff should already be in there in the form of a a variation of a single leg movement in different planes.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I believe in defending the sagittal plane where everything starts from there. I think sometimes we move into the frontal and transverse movements a little too quickly with load. But if you can't do a standard lunge correctly, it's going to be tough to do a rotational lunge.
Right.
So everything's fundamental, everything's layered, just like anything in growth, right? You got to start from the base and you funnel up. The greater and the more dynamic the base is, the wider the foundation, the stronger you're going to be. And that's really what our goal is when it comes to the overall progression of athleticism is we want these guys to have a tremendous base, right? We want their foundation to be so well structured that when they get into position specific work, they have the abilities. When they move into group work, when they move into team setting, and then when they move into competition, it all funnels up to an outstanding performance. And I'm sure you can, if you're in the business world or in your life settings, you can utilize that same thing. What is your quality foundation? What is the support structure of your business? And again, a lot of people might say, well, that's our culture is based off these values. Well, does everybody know those values? Well, I don't know. So then how can that be your foundation? And like I've learned a lot being a leader and trying to make things simple but effective is, we talk about mission statements, right? We've all talking about it. And if you've noticed, people are much better than others, but a lot of times a mission statement is really a mission paragraph for a lot of people. I can't remember a paragraph. I got into meditation and stuff, and
interesting.
And one thing that I learned, and it helps, is you got mantras, right? So I call them mission mantras, and that's where I'll piece together certain terms and try to relate them to things because it's easier for me to remember those three terms. And then how I expand on that may change daily. The principles are the same, but because you're not verbatim throwing out definitions from somebody else, I can, as long as I know, like, for example, my mission mantra for developing athletes is preparation, protection, performance.
Okay.
So the base is preparation. That becomes education, development, protection, putting them in a process and developing a plan that gives them, like we talked about, the confidence that their body armor, both mentally and physically, is prepared to succeed in performance. That when they go out to perform, they're confident that the preparation that they've done is well-founded. They put together a plan that is protecting me, and now I can go out there and just go, all out for as long as I can, and hopefully I succeed. And then that filters out into the objective of being, a champion. Yeah. But then when I talk about exercise technique, I call it the 3 C's of exercise technique: corrosive, competent, and competitive. Well, we never want to see corrosive technique in our room because that means it's irrelevant and we're wasting time. We're promoting a atmosphere of potential injury. Right. And there has no shot of any type of transferable movement to sport. Now, by being corrosive, you may lift more weight, and people will say, "Well, the guy thinks he benched 400 because you helped him with the bar." Well, I'm not going to be able to help him when the guy who benches 300 is beating him down on the field
with good form and leverage. Yeah.
Or why have a guy do a terrible 400-pound hang clean, but his vertical jump's only 24 inches?
What's the bet? Yeah.
I mean,
what's the benefit?
If you clean correctly, you're going to have a pretty solid vertical.
Right.
So let's clean lighter and righter, and we'll probably jump higher.
Right.
So again, there is just a lot of things that I've come, because I know if it works for me, the people who are able to retain things better than I am will definitely work for them, because it's almost too simple for them.
Too simple to forget, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, again.
Yeah, no, and that's like how our brains work, right? It's like when it's something that's like memorable or catchy or rhymes. I mean, that's why.
For example, say you work for me, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you, look, our mission mantra here is preparation, protection, and production, right? Yeah. Performance, production. And I'm going to explain to you what those are. But in the end, when you're talking to the tennis coach, because you see the tennis team, and they say, well, what's your all's mission down there? And you say, oh, well, it's preparation, protection, and production. And then you're going to verbalize that in your own way. You're not going to, you're going to talk about preparation means I'm going to sit down with the team and we're going to go over the card and we're going to explain it. And we're going to go through different types of technique. I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to discuss what you think is necessary that I put in the program. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about nutrition, rest. And that stuff can even go into protection too. But we're going to meet with therapy, our physios, to see what types of injury patterns are very much dominant in these sports and what movements they believe we can bring into our programming, whether it be in the beginning pre-activity prep or specific exercises in the main session. Then we go into protection. Now we build this model. We've prepared this thing. We've created this, a smorgasbord of stuff, but now we've got to funnel it into this performance model this protection model, which is your programming. And then if that is dialed in right and you put in your conditioning, your plyos, your sprinting, your change of direction, now you look at it from a production. Did we produce a more robust, resilient, and increased KPI'd athlete, general-based athlete?
Yeah.
And if we've done that, and that's where I got a little thrown off, then we've done that, then that carries over to their coaching staff, which is specific physical preparation. And then that's the fourth P. That's performance.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And kind of the theme I'm starting to see here, and, part of the reason I asked that question, like, has the tier system held up over time? Like, the answer makes complete sense because, like, it's a structure that it sounds like allows for a lot of innovation and experimentation and, like, to your point, like, personalization based upon the sport where you're trying to make these, these 3 Ps transfer to.
Yeah. Like my son's an intern at Iowa State, and his boss asked him to write a tennis program. And this is his first real delving into somebody saying, oh, write a program. And he sent it to me and I was pretty impressed, but there was a few things I would have done different, but my experience is different.
Right.
And I look at it way different now because I'm so much older. But when I looked at it, I was like, okay, the guy's thinking. The good thing was he's thinking in the right direction. Like, he didn't pick like I said, there's any bad exercises, but it's the applicability of an exercise.
Right.
And I think he did a good job in his needs analysis, and more importantly, his risk analysis on how he picks certain exercises that where I could see other coaches just saying, well, we've got to do this because it builds this, but yet there's a lot of different variations that are more safer.
Can you talk about the risk analysis specifically? Because you mentioned that a couple times.
So let's just say tennis, for example, right?
Okay.
Well, their hands are extremely important, which means their wrists are extremely important. Why would I have them clean?
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's that simple, right? You're just looking for the simplest justification.
Yeah.
And even then, like I would have them front squat, but even then I'm thinking, like I told my son, if you're going to have them front squat and they have any issues with their wrists, then you got to use straps.
Yep.
Or go into, but nowadays, because we've been exposed to some stuff, you can go 2 kettlebell, what we call it,
right.
kettlebell squat. Some people go further, like we go 2 kettlebell anterior loaded, which, goblet. There's a lot of things out there now that we can mimic. And again, we want our tennis players to be strong, but I don't think,
but not at the risk of injuring them.
I don't think max testing them in a front squat or a back squat is going to, and again, you're thinking about the wrist in the front squat, but for them, again, what's another thing that's very important to them? Shoulders.
Yeah. So
if I have them back squat, and there's, like you'll see with a lot of, that puts extreme stress on the external rotators. Especially, and that's why you see a lot of the bigger athletes will go all the way out because they don't have the mobility to get tight.
Yeah.
So again, if you're putting that much stress on your external rotators squatting and is that really necessary for a tennis player or a golfer?
Right.
And even more so a golfer. I don't know if I don't know. I like bilateral squatting just for balance in my programming.
Okay.
But I don't know if I was training a golfer, brand new or not, if I ever would go any further than, some type of kettlebell or goblet squat, unless the golfer was, a Tiger Woods type of person. Give me a little something more to challenge myself. But a lot of times that training's different. Now they do, lunging and rotation work. That would be emphasized a lot. Like instead of Olympic lifting, I might have them do a tremendous amount of, high impact, what I call launching med balls into a wall in a rotation fashion, because that gives me a total body component with explosive capacities that is very, very conducive to them being successful. Tennis players also. So those are the things. Like, do I need to snatch, jerk, power clean those types of athletes? No. That's a risk analysis. There's nothing wrong with those exercises, because if I'm training a thrower, they're probably doing those exercises.
Right. No, that makes sense. Well, and actually, something I would love to, and I know I've taken up a lot of your time.
That's fine.
So maybe we can make this one of the last couple questions I ask you. But for you within the tier system, you said when this was kind of developed, and it sounds like I think still today, right? There is maybe the industry split on, hey, what's better, total body versus split. For you, why is it so important that it is a total body approach? And when I say total body, maybe for the people listening, you can explain. So, you can explain what I'm trying to say here. Well,
again, like I gave you that simple rationalization before. The simple justification is how are most again, take away Paralympics and the Olympic people who have special needs because of injury.
Oh, okay.
But generally in my population, how is most athletics played?
Whole body. Yeah, whole body. Yeah. For those listening, he's looking at me like, come on.
No, but I mean,
you knucklehead.
But
you know how it's played.
But there's a lot of teams that have won a lot of championships doing a 4-day split. And that's why I say if programming, everybody's got their programmings, right? And everybody's going to stick to what got them there. And I'm going to stick to mine. That's why I said the programmer has to have the belief. What that looks like does not matter if the athlete can tell, man, this is what we got to do. That you can see this guy is all in on this. It's just a belief, right? If I believe in it, it's going to come across much more confidently than if I don't. Like, oh man, the last program I did sucked. Let me try this. And the guys are like start to ask you questions and you can't answer questions.
Right.
So there's and because of the principles of things, like again, West Side Barbell has a unique 4-day template.
Right.
But the cyclical principles of West Side fit my model tremendously. So again, I don't utilize a West Side template to train my athletes, but the cyclical and the rotation of things that they do fits my stuff tremendously. I've had tremendous success utilizing the things that Louis Simmons exposed us to. The maximal effort, the dynamic effort, the repetitive method. Well, that fit some of my programming model of the tier system with the old heavy, moderate, light. So instead of going heavy, moderate, light, you go maximal effort, dynamic effort, repetitive method. So that's how that's the difference between a basic template and what I call an elite template. But the truth is, that was the cycle. That's where I blew it in the book. I came up with this traditional template. I called it an elite template, but really I should have called them traditional cycle and the elite cycle. And that threw a lot of people off. So I apologize. When you read that book, that'll throw people off because the exercises are the same. It's the intent of the exercise that changes.
Ah,
So
okay. Yeah.
when you're with a traditional model, generally if you go heavy, moderate, light, the percentage change, but the rep scheme stays the same. So for in a general,
Oh, okay.
the general example I always use is, so if the heavy day is 5 sets of 5 at 85, the
Mm-hmm.
moderate day is 5 sets of 5 at 75, the light day is 5 sets of 5 at 65.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm doing the elite model and utilizing maximal effort, repetitive effort, and dynamic effort, that might look like, okay, we're going to do 5 sets of 5 at 80%. I mean, I'm just randomly picking up for the heavy day. But now on the dynamic day, we're going to do 15 doubles at 45%. And then on the repetitive day, we're going to do 3 sets of 12.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the manipulation of different means of strength within a concept. And that's
But
what
it still fits. It still fits
but it
within
still
your
fits. Well,
tier
yeah, because
system,
all I'm
like you
doing
said.
now is, so like the heavy day is tier 1,
Yep.
the moderate day is tier 2, and the light day is tier 3. Depending on how I do those cycles, the maximal effort day is tier 1, the dynamics tier 2, and the repetitive tier 3. But
Yeah.
and then that fluctuates throughout the different tiers as we go. So then we're like, it could be, maximal effort squat tier 1, dynamic effort bench tier 2, and then a volume repetitive effort like a clean pull for tier 3.
Right.
So it all flows. It's a flow. It's ebb and flow. It's how things match.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense though.
so I was fortunate that Coach Thompson allowed me some creative freedom, or this never exists. Uh,
Hmm.
and again, so he deserves a lot of thanks for his trust in me when he hired me to take these sports. And again, it was the combination of, I had creative freedom and Coach Doherty challenging me without challenging me by saying, I'm tired of doing the old football programs.
Yeah.
So the tier system was built for Olympic. It was built based off of my first interactions in college with women's sports and Olympic sports, what they called non-revenue back then. Because
Yeah.
my 2 years I coached in high school, I was using a 4-day split because that's what I knew, and
Yeah. Oh,
I
okay.
was using it. I was highly influenced by. It's not what I knew; it's what I believed what was supposed to be done.
Yeah.
When I was in college, like I said, we were a 3-day-a-week program, high intensity training with some power lifts and Olympic lifts mixed in. But because of the conflicts between the coach and the strength coach, I may have done hang cleans 5 times in 5 years, and it was on our card every week. So it
Yeah.
was one of those deals, right? And you learn. That's where I learned to justify stuff.
Hmm.
Because when a coach calls you in and asks you a question about your program, you better have a answer.
Right.
You can't hem and haw. Like, oh, what do you mean? Not going to work. It's not.
Yeah. There's got to have a concrete
Yeah,
reason why that's
it's
in there.
not going to work that way. So again, you learn a lot from that. But when I went to start coaching, because of what I had studied was predominantly most programs with 4-day splits, and I studied heavily. Coach John Gamble at that time was the strength coach at Virginia, and Mike Gentry was the strength coach at Virginia Tech at that time. And I studied their programs extensively. And my program was built on their two programming. And I did that for 2 years of high school. And like I said, when I went to Boise State, then when I went back to Wake Forest, before I went to Boise State, I was back in that atmosphere of the 3-day-a-week type of work, but I was training some guys individually, and we were doing a little bit more percentage-based stuff with them because I had learned more about percentages. And then I got, then again, when I got to Boise State in July of 1991 is when I started working with these athletes. And then by 1992, the first revisions and additions of the tier system started making its way into Boise State athletics. And now, 30 something years later, man, we're still going strong. We have a lot of people who have had a lot of success with it. I'm trying to do some things educationally wise now, because a lot of people, like we talked about, say they're doing the tier system and they're breaking some of the integrity of it. The integrity is the template. Like you can manipulate a lot of things like we talked about, but if you start messing around with the order of the exercises, you're no longer doing the tier system.
Yeah. And again, we could probably talk about this all night, but that order within the tier system, what is the method, so to speak, to that madness?
Yes.
Right.
Why
is that so important? Yeah.
So everything's based off of athleticism, right? So,
yeah.
and in the case, and at this point in time, we'll just keep it where it's at. And again, you can manipulate the days. I mean, we've gone for a while, but let's just say this.
Yeah.
Total body movement, like we talked about, to me has a high value in athletics. Some people don't believe in Olympic lifts. I get it. I believe it. If it's done properly, you can do that. So total body is number one. Like that's your number. So if I could only do one exercise, I would probably pick some version of a total body lift.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would get a lot of the components.
Right.
Then what's the next most important in athletics? Your legs. So we'll do that. So the first day of the week, I want to hit total body. Well, the second most important thing for most athletics is lower body, your legs.
Right.
And that's going to be 2. And then upper body is just a feeder.
Ah, okay.
3. So that's your order across the board. That's how the week started. You come in and you do your total body on Monday.
What is the most important thing that we need to hit if we hit nothing else?
Right. And then what's the next day? So then you take that. So you got TLU going across. Well, then you just run it down on the same session. So Monday, TLU.
Yep.
Wednesday, LUT. Friday, UTL. And then if you, based off the heavy, moderate, light, you go from a heavy to a light.
Got it.
And then you go, and then like, so you're always the next day on a light, except for the upper body day, because you have 2 days off for the weekend. And that's how we manipulated it, and it worked.
Yeah. No, that actually was a really concise explanation.
So everything's based off of the 3x3. And then to add more work, you just start to cycle over. So we went 3, 5, and I actually had a 7. But what I found out on the 7 was a lot of ancillary work that now that's become things we've talked about, like posterior chain and things that we do in the pre-activity prep. So there's really 2 sections to daily plan. There's the pre-activity preparation. I don't call it a warm-up because it's not – warming up is very – I'm going to go walk a lap, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind explaining this is one of the things I wanted to definitely get to. So I would love to hear this.
The pre-activity preparation gives it purpose. So what you're doing is you're prepping the body, and it has the same basic, like you remember, like warm-up, improve core temperature, lube up tendons and ligaments. I mean, you've seen them, all that stuff. It's the same principles, but now it's very specific, though, to the programming of the strength. Like a lot of times, I'm sure, like even in your day, before you went in the weight room, you'd go out and do high knees, and you'd line up like you're going to do track. And you do,
and it would be consistent. It would be the same stuff, no matter what was going to be the lift that you were going to go in and do.
We're going to do what I call reset work. Will be on your own. That's kind of like mobility work. Foam roll if you need it.
Got it.
That would be stuff I would recommend if you really believe you need to do some basic mobility and get your body joint centration and all that other stuff, and do some rocking and crawling and some of those primal moving stuff. That would be something that we may do that on the field for field work, but we won't do it on. That would be something I would tell you. That's something you need to jump in before we start your session and get your foam rolling and your self myofascial release stuff done. But we're going to come in and we're going to do what I follow Mike Robertson's 7 R's. So he's got this organization of 7 R's. I've added a bunch. So you're going to do what I call Reboot. And for the lack of a better term, reboot is like activation work. And
Okay.
that's stuff that we're gonna add in with some banded movements. So it could be some hip ab and ad work. It could be a lateral lunge. It could be a hip lift. Or it could be a vertical pull apart. But it's something banded to give you a little bit of resistance and to help just get those things moving, like reboot, refire. Just get them woke up. Just wake these things up. And then,
and is the intention of it? It's like the
depending on
warm-up?
what it's based off of what the emphasis of the day is.
Got it. Makes complete sense.
Then we're going to do root work, so your core.
Yeah.
And then depending on the athlete and the sport, we will do some type of reinforcement or neck work. And depending on the athlete or the sport will depend on what that volume is. If you're in high volume, high volatile, high collision sports, we're going to emphasize that more than if you're non-contact tennis, golf. But there's something to be done about posture alignment. So it all starts, here down. So we're going to do so. I don't want everybody to have 20-inch necks, but I want them to be, again, from a posture mechanics standpoint, especially nowadays when we all have the
I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. So badly, and I'm on camera. What am I?
So we're going to do that. And then we're going to do some readiness work, which is going to be some high volume, lather up types of stuff that are going to get you, again, prepared to enter the main session. Then the main session, depending if it's 3 tiers or 5, we're going to knock out 5 and we're going to wrap it up.
How long does this pre-activity prep typically take, just for folks?
Me? If it's done I do mine in blocks. So every one of the things that I talk to you about, I do very specific. So I'm going to do my root by itself, my reset by itself, my reboot by itself. Well, I combine, okay. But for the athletes, that'll be a circuit. So they'll go through like root, reboot, readiness, reinforcement, and then they'll come around and do another cycle of exercises. So it generally it'll come out to be about 3 rounds.
Okay.
4 distinct categories, 12 unique exercises.
Oh, cool.
And then, like I said, and then depending on the sport, the reinforcement or the neck work could be additional work.
Well, and maybe this is a good segue, because I really appreciate how much time you've taken to explain all this with me. But you have some awesome videos on your channel on YouTube where actually you can watch you take athletes through it. And I've enjoyed watching that as well.
That's my son going through all his.
Is that your son? That's what I wanted to ask.
Okay, so wait, I've got 2 YouTubes. Are you talking about the Inside the House YouTube?
I'm talking about Inside the House, and then there's the what is it? The Big
House 7-7.
I think so.
Yeah. So my youngest son is a lot on that. But if you want to see what a tier system workout looks like, or what a training session, I should call it training session, looks like, on the Inside the House with Joe Kenn, I think it is Joe Big House.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
There's a 4-layer deal that has 4 his exact programming he did this summer for throwing.
That's what I watched. That's what I watched.
So and that's great. And then we sped up the pre-activity prep, but you can see all the different movement, and that'll take what I would call a highly qualified athlete, less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, perfect.
So you're humping.
Yeah. No, and I'm going to link to all that too, because I think it'll help people visualize a lot of the stuff we've talked about as well, which will be great. So, I mean, look, I would love to sit here and talk strongman with you as well, because I know that's another passion of yours, which I share.
I'm the weakest strongman in the world. I'm on the semi. Now I'm even weaker, so I don't even know if strong.
Will you do any competitions, or is it just purely you love training in that way?
I did one competition in strongman, so I can say I've actually competed as a strongman competitor.
Okay, there we go.
Actually, so I did that in 2009.
All right.
As a master's athlete, I've competed in powerlifting. I've not competed in weightlifting. Powerlifting. I did my last meet a couple of years ago because I was chasing a goal of 500 at 50. To deadlift 500 again at 50 years old.
That's a
And
great
I
goal.
missed it at 50 and came back and did it the next year at the same meet at 51.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
So let me ask you this. What, cause I love, we didn't talk about it as much today, but I know that you were big on actually getting under the bar, letting your guys see you put in the work. What gets you fired up now? Like what are the goals that are keeping you excited about what you're doing for yourself?
I'm around athletes all day. You have to be young at heart, right?
Yeah.
Age is a limiting factor. I mean, let's not. Now, I have the utmost respect. Like, I'm a big Brian Shaw fan because Brian worked with us at Arizona State. But my
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
my true, like, really, like, if you want to call them heroes in strongman, are Mark Felix and Nick Best, because Mark's my age
Savages.
and Nick Best is 51 years old, and you watch them guys, and it's like, I have the utmost respect because I know what my strength capabilities are right now.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous that those
Just
guys are still
what those guys
qualifying for
do.
world's strongest man.
It's unbelievable.
So I look at it like my goals are to inspire people who are more like me, because those guys are exceptional. That, hey, I was an ex-athlete, loved to compete. I've always loved to train. So I'm going to. Right now, it's a little bit tougher because I don't have a purpose. There's not a goal. Like, I'm not compete. So a lot of variations all the time. But I'm trying to train as heavy as I can go based off what my body feels that day. Like,
Okay.
some days I can move better than others. Range of motion in like a deadlift is better than others. So I'll do something. But then the next time around, I might not feel the same. So I got to flip it up. But I try to train. I don't think I train maximally anymore, and that's not because I don't want to. It's just at this point, like last year, I had this year has been 2020 was, had nothing to do with COVID. It just wasn't a good year for me to get strong. But 2019, man, I did some things that even at any age, I did a 500 I did 500 for a triple on a high handle trap on a trap bar beltless that I'd never done in my whole life. Beltless.
No kidding. At 49?
53.
Oh, at 53.
Yeah. I safety bar squatted 405 for 3. I hadn't done that since I was powerlifting in like 2000, in the 2000s. And what was the other? There was one other thing I did that I can't remember right now. Why can't I remember? There was one other thing I did that I was like, damn, I did a RDL, vert pull deadlift. I did 315 for 8 with a 52 pounds of chain. And that was my most impressive of the year.
Oh, man.
And I feel
my hamstrings hurt thinking about that one.
I was very happy about that. And now it's kind of a lot different right now training. So it's hard. I'm always reevaluating myself. Like I said, I don't want to call it rehab. I like to call it just a rebuild. I'm trying to find different ways to rebuild stuff and try to maintain as strong as, and again, strength now is a relative term. There's not I was never super strong anyway. Like, I was a class 2 powerlifter. That's what I was. I mean, Joe average right off the bat, class 2. When you look at the structures of the classifications in powerlifting, the class 2 lifter is an average lifter. That's what I was. But I love to compete. And I was a big believer that even to this day, if I feel like I want to max deadlift, whether it's 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 400 pounds, I'll probably go to a meet to do it just so it was done. That's just me. That's my thing. I'm not telling anybody to do it, but I do believe you have to train, whatever that means, right? You have to show your athletes that you're still putting in the work. What that work is, it's up to you.
It's up to you.
For me, I'm a power lifter by trade, so I'm going to train that similar to that model. And then, I do some good morning work. Terrible at it, but my athletes are not going to do good mornings. We're going to train different modalities to train the erectors in a more conducive, risk-free environment, because that's a very unique exercise. You got to have your head in the game for good mornings. And like I said, most athletes' number one goal isn't to lift weights. So their heads are in the game, but they're not in the game a lot of times in the weight room. So you got to be
Right.
you got to be smart on your choices. So I
makes
just
sense.
like I said, I like when I show people, like if you watch my stuff now on Instagram, there's no ridiculous amount of load. But what I'm showing is, hey man, I'm training hard, and I'm 50 plus years old. I'm gonna be 55. This year I'll be 55, and that's what it's all about. Like just training hard and just proving that, hey man, you got to put the work in.
Yeah. Oh, it's perfect. Well, and that's a good segue here, because you do put out a lot of educational content. Where are the best places that I can point folks, to what you're doing today?
Yeah. So I like this. I mean, I say so a lot, but my website is bighousepower.com.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be subscriber based. Now it's all the content's free.
Oh, awesome.
The only difference is that they'll say on the house and they'll say inside the house. Well, inside the house used to be the subscriber based.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So to activate that material, I do ask for an email.
Yeah.
But everything except for what's on the store is free content.
Awesome.
Then it's at Big House Power is my Twitter and Instagram feeds.
Yeah, and then you've got the 2 YouTube channels.
Yeah, the Big House 77 is not defunct because I'd lose all those videos, but it's my personal one. It hasn't been updated, but the one now that I'm trying to promote more is the Inside the House with Joe Kenn one. That's the one that we're trying to get. And again, it's hard, like putting together a podcast. But when you're a one-man show, you have these delusions of grandeur that you're going to put all this content out, but you're the editor, you're the talent, right? You're the filmer. And that's why sometimes you do these films and it's like, man, this stuff doesn't look good, but you don't have anybody working the camera. You're doing still, like you got to move it here so you get this shot, then you got to and it takes a lot. And when you train by yourself, which is not conducive to a lot of people, but it's just the way it is for me because of my schedule. I don't like to stop and reset stuff because I do a lot of things on tempo and time,
right?
And so it's crazy. And I feel I talk to more people, and then you find out they got a team. And I'm like, okay, no wonder why your content is on out the roof and your followers are up 2 million because you're knocking this out and you got some people behind the scenes. And right now I'm the guy behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, you're putting out great stuff. And like I said, I mean, I've had a lot of fun watching it over the last week, a lot of the recent stuff that you did. So I'll make sure to link to everything. And again, just thank you. This has been a lot of fun. And
anytime,
it's been good talking to you.
I appreciate the question. Like I said, man, I appreciate anybody who's willing to listen. I mean, we kind of went all over the place, but I thought we had some good chats.
Absolutely.